Hey everybody, this is John for Pioneer Nexus MTG coming at you with another in-depth deck guide. This one not necessarily referring to a deck specifically, but instead to Karn the Great Creator and its myriad of options, especially in mono green devotion. Now, Karn does show up in some other decks, sometimes shows up in mono red fires, as well as some other decks in the format, but primarily this card shows up in mono green. So I've tried to find as many sideboard options as I've seen play. There's definitely going to be some I'm going to miss. It's just kind of the nature of things, unfortunately. When you have a Karn wish board, people are working on different things. So we're going to try to get as many of the various cards. Okay, Soul-Guide Lantern was the one that I was trying to think of. But to start off the list, obviously looking at Karn itself, its +1 ability turns non-creature artifacts into artifacts with power toughness equal to its mana value. -2, you may reveal an artifact you own from outside the game, or choose a face-up artifact card you own in exile. Put that card into your hand. Very simply, this turns your sideboard into a wish board, allows you to have various different bullets for different situations. Starting off the lower end here, Treasure Vault and Darksteel Citadel are options that see play in a lot of the sideboards. These are your ways to hit additional land drops if you're not hitting land drops. Treasure Vault also serves another purpose of creating black mana, which is important for the Pestilent Cauldron combo. We'll talk about when we get to that card. Now, as far as other cards, you have your Graveyard Hate cards, Tormod's Crypt, Soul-Guide Lantern, Grafdigger's Cage. Now, these three see play in different situations. Tormod's Crypt is at its best when you just need a 0 mana play. So, very good against Izzet Phoenix, very good against Greasefang, keeping them from doing their thing. Soul-Guide Lantern, a little bit slower, gives you a little bit more control over things, allows you to exile one card immediately, and then choose if you want to draw a card or just exile the graveyards later. Grafdigger's Cage has kind of fallen off because it does shut off the Storm the Festival part of the deck. You used to see more play when Winota was part of the format, shutting down the Winota ETB stuff, but still an option that has seen play in the past. Other newer addition, Haywire Might, allows you to have a way to blow up problematic enchantments, especially out of the various Fires decks, whether it be Enigmatic Incarnations, Fires of Invention, Leyline Binding, those kind of things. Pithing Needle is a card that has kind of become the in some ways, the surgical extraction of the Pioneer format. This is a card that you have a problem with a particular permanent, generally Pithing Needle solves it. Liliana of the Veil, Crewing Vehicles, Manlands, anything that obviously with an activated ability that isn't mana, this kind of solves that in a pinch and is definitely a one-of bullet in most Karn sideboards. Shadow Spear, this is a card that should theoretically help in the creature-based matchups. You put this on one of your big doofuses, you attack with them or block with them, gain some life, pull you ahead in some situations. In practicality, I've never found it particularly useful because the decks that you want this against are doing their best to ignore your big dumb idiots anyway. Either spirits are trying to bounce through things or counter them. Mono white's just trying to go around them with Brave the Elements, etc. So I find this to be interesting, but not always great. But certainly a card that does pop up in some sideboards, especially in mono green variants, as ways to race situations. Also sometimes pops up in the mono red fires lists. Damping Sphere, this is here for Lotus Field. Also can come in the mirror match. Shuts Lotus Field down cold. Also shuts down your own Nicholas's, so use this at your own peril. Mainly there for the Lotus Field matchup. Reckoner Bankbuster, this is kind of a hybrid vehicle that you can use to pressure your opponents, giving some of your creatures pseudo haste as far as pressuring people like blue-white control and such. Also as a way to draw cards. Doesn't see play as many in sideboards, but still something that shows up from time to time. Stone Brain, kind of a newer addition to the deck. It's been out since the Brothers' War. This is basically an extraction style effect, similar to Necromentia or those kind of things, slaughter games. Usually used to strip your opponent of their important resources. Now, there are some situations where you can literally deck your opponent with this card, particularly involving the Chain Veil and Teferi here. Teferi, who slows the sunset, giving you infinite activations of Karn, allowing you to get infinite mana. Then you can get the Stone Brain to kind of infinitely mill your opponent out of everything. That said, it's primarily here to shut down cards that rely on, or decks that rely on one specific card, but can also be used to strip your opponent of all win cons and just kind of guarantee that you're going to win a game. Unlicensed Hearse, yet another graveyard thing. Very good versus targeting hate, so very good against things like Greasefang and such. A little bit slow and awkward against Cat Oven because of the way Cat Oven works, but if you have a Karn in play in this, you can generally deal with Cat. Filigree Silex is a newer one. This is basically Ratchet Bomb. Put a counter on it. Sacrifice Filigree, silence each non-land permanent with mana value equal to the number of oil counters on Filigree Silence. Or remove 10 oil counters from permanents you control. Sacrifice the Silex, deals 10 damage to any target. So, Ratchet Bomb with a little bit of upside if you have a whole lot of time and patience on your hands. Speaking of Ratchet Bomb, good way to clear out some early things, good way to clear out tokens against something like Creativity. Also fairly decent against low to the ground aggro or auras decks. Kind of a pseudo board wipe in those cases. Heart of Kirin serves two purposes. One, it's an easy 2-mana play that you can use to protect your Planeswalkers, use them to protect your Kioras, your Karns, potentially your Nisses, your Boluses, etc. And also can be part of the infinite combo that we'll talk about here in 1 second with Pestilent Cauldron. This also can be a way to potentially block flyers, particularly out of Angels and Spirits. So this is one you'll see pop up on occasion as both a combo enabler and a way to deal with your opponent's flying threats or just pressure their Planeswalkers or life total. Transmogrifying Wand, this is a way to kill problematic creatures, leaves them behind with a 2/4. Not the fastest way to do it, but sometimes you just need to blow something like a Shouldered Up, and this is certainly a way to do it. Pestilent Cauldron. This is the card that really takes some explaining. So this card started to pop up right about the time that Winota got banned. So Mono Green got put back on the map. This is a deck that has suffered innumerable bannings, unbannings. It's seen a lot of cards out of it banned in the early portion of the format. Kind of fell off for a while during Combo Winter and all that, and it came back with a vengeance when people discovered the Pestilent Cauldron combo. So the way this works is, theoretically, you need 2 Karns, 2 Kioras, and a Nykthos. If you can generate 14 mana, you're able to do this dance where you pick up Karn, pick up Kiora, activate Karn, activate Kiora, with Restorative Burst, which is the backside of this. Return up to 2 target creatures or Planeswalkers from your graveyard to your hand. Each player gains 4 life. Exile Restorative Burst. Because Pestilent Cauldron is exiled, you can then pick it up with your new copy of Karn. Use Kiora to untap Nykthos. Continue on your merry way. Essentially, you do this loop where you gain 4 life, loop Restorative Burst, loop your Planeswalkers, etc. It takes a little bit of setup because, like I said, you need 2 Kioras, 2 Karns, 14 mana. Not always the easiest to manage. Secondarily, you can also use the Heart of Kirin that we kind of talked about a second ago to remove loyalty from the Planeswalkers. So you only need 1 copy of each Planeswalker to get this combo rolling. But once you get to a sufficient amount of life gain per that turn, you use something like the Treasure Vault or Sylvan Caryatid or Overgrown Tomb to give you a black mana, and then cast the front end of Pestilent Cauldron. Each opponent mills cards equal to the amount of life you've gained this turn, effectively milling them out, winning the game. Yay. Another card that plays into this is the Chain Veil. At the beginning of your end step, if you didn't activate a loyalty ability of a Planeswalker you control, lose 2 life. Okay, kind of annoying, but the activated ability is really where this is at. 4 tap. For each Planeswalker you control, you may activate one of its loyal abilities once this turn, as though none of its loyal abilities have been activated this turn. This decreases the amount of devotion you need for Kiora to do the loop. And also with Kiora who sets, or Teferi who sets the sun, it becomes infinite activations as long as you have either Nykthos or basically a way to make 4 mana. If you have, a forest suited up with a couple copies of the enchantment that's escaping me at the moment, of Wolf Willow Haven, say that makes 3 mana and you have an elf, you can tap the elf, tap the forest, tap the Chain Veil, get this infinite activations of planeswalkers. From there, you then use Karn to do the infinite activations, and you can win with either Pestilent Cauldron combo or just completely stripping their deck with a Stone Brain once you have infinite mana. Definitely helps with a combo, kind of short up some of the combo's weaknesses overall, not needing a huge board presence and everything else that you were already kind of winning with anyway. But definitely a card you should be aware of, and is a reason why you'll see Teferi who slows the sun in some of these lists. One card that really doesn't show up in the Pioneer format, but did for a time in the Explorer format, before the inclusion of Nykthos Shrine to Nyx in the Explorer format, Nyx Lotus was kind of the stand-in for this. Basically, it comes into play tap, Nykthos Shrine to Nyx. You tap it, choose a color, add any amount of devotion. Costs 4 mana to do. So, effectively, this was your Nykthos Shrine to Nyx in that format. Now, 4 mana comes into play tap, a little bit annoying. Obviously, if you have like a Kiora in play when you play this, it's a lot easier to start going off. It's basically Nykthos in artifact form. Not much more else to say about it. Doesn't really see play because it's kind of redundant with the actual card legal. Asika's Chariot. This is kind of a mid-range battle card. This is what you do when you need something to bridge the gap. Say you don't have any creatures in play or anything, and you either need to pressure your opponent or protect your planeswalkers. This is one of the cards that you can go get. Puts a couple tokens on the battlefield, creates tokens whenever it attacks. Pretty solid card overall. Sees a lot of play in the format in general, especially out of Gruul vehicles, and also sometimes in these mono-green sideboards. Another card doesn't see as much play. Saw play earlier in the format, or as the deck was evolving, and that's Golos Tireless Pilgrim. This basically allows you to go fetch Nykthos. There's also a combo with Cascading Cataracts. 7 mana, you get to exile the top 3 cards of your library. So, once again, this was more of an Explorer card, but did see occasional play in Pioneer. The two kind of anti-creature cards, Sky Sovereign Consul Flagship. This is kind of the mid-range creature killer. It kind of breaks the mirror match. It kind of breaks the matchup against Rakdos and against Gruul vehicles. Lightstone the Meekstone does something very similar. Also helps with mana activations. You can use this to activate your Nykthos and stuff, even though you can't use it to cast non-artifact spells. Still, you can use it to activate different abilities, things like the Chain Veil, etc. Comes in, either draws you 2 cards or gives target creature -5/-5. Is a way to cleanly answer Shieldred. It's something that Sky Sovereign itself can't do. But, both of these see play now as kind of your anti-creature removal spells besides Transmogrifying Wand. Godfarrow's Statue, this is kind of your close the door on them kind of card. Forces your opponent to pay 2 more for their spells, and at the end step they each lose 1 life. And then Karn can turn it into a 6/6 beater. Overall, very powerful card that sees play in a lot of these sideboards. The Immortal Sun, this was a card that saw play some when people were trying to figure out the Wish board with Pestilent Cauldron Restorative Burst. So, it makes your creatures bigger, your spells cost 1 less to cast, and you draw an additional card. Sounds great. The problem is, players can't activate Planeswalker loyalty abilities. That's a problem when most of your deck is based around Karn, Kiora, and the synergies to go with that. So this card, rightly so, has kind of fallen by the wayside, but was certainly a card you could bring in against something like Blue-White Control, shut down all their annoying Planeswalkers and such. But a card that's kind of faded from obscurity and just doesn't really exist in these Wish boards, but is something that did pop up from time to time. Meteor Golem comes into play, destroys target non-permanent, has largely been replaced by Cityscape Leveler, who whenever you cast the spell or attack, whenever it attacks, destroy up to one non-land permanent. Its controller gains a tapped Power Stone token. Basically an upgraded version of Meteor Golem. Costs one more mana, blows things up more easily. Portal to Phyrexia. Now this is a bit of an overkill card sometimes. So this card comes down, forces your opponent to sacrifice 3 creatures. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may put a target creature card on the battlefield under your control. It's a Phyrexia in addition to its other types. A lot of times you cast this is kind of your board wipe for your opponent's stuff. Sometimes it's a Hail Mary and can get you there. Sometimes it's just a win more card. I personally have never found it overly useful when playing mono green, but it is a card that pops up in these sideboards. Another card that pops up in the sideboards is the Great Henge. This allows you to get ahead on mana, draw some cards, gain some life, add some mana. Spell costs X less to cast, where X is the greatest power among creatures you control. So if you have an Old Growth Troll or a Cavalier of Thorns in play, this can often cost 4 or 5 less. Play this, tap it for 2 mana, and immediately gain some life. Pretty good in aggressive situations where you need to get a little bit of life, but what it really is there for is whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter out and draw a card. This is really a card advantage spell. It was mainly for grinding against decks like Rakdos and Blue-White Control. Has somewhat fallen out of favor, but you will occasionally see it in these sideboards. And finally, Woodcolor Automaton. Whenever it enters the battlefield, if you cast it, untap target land you control, it becomes a tree-folk creature with haste and base power and toughness equal to Woodcolor Automaton's power and toughness. It's still a land. Prototype. You can prototype it for, I believe, 2 and 2 green. This adds to your devotion. This untaps your Nykthos. It's basically a way for Karn to untap Nykthos and kind of continue the combo. And then that's pretty much it. Now, there might be some other cards that I missed. I tried to look up lists over the last year at different points, as well as scouring through MTG Goldfish's current listings for Mono Green Devotion. And these are the vast majority of options I've seen. As you can see, that's over 30 different sideboard options for your Karn Wish board, in addition to any other cards you might want to play that aren't artifacts or colorless cards. So that's quite a mouthful. You see why Karn's so powerful and why people were, when Mono Green was too powerful, why people were calling for Karn to be banned. It really gives you a Swiss Army knife for any situation, as well as a couple different various infinite combos to win the game. So, Karn's a powerful card. It's got some powerful options. These are what you need to know. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe if you like these kind of videos. Hope to see you for the next video.